Shut it down now, Commander Dorian Kade barked, his voice sharp with urgency. The flashing red lights bathed the command center in an unsettling hue as the deep space listening post buckled under the weight of the strange signal. He slammed a fist down on the console, but the data kept spilling in, faster, more erratic, too much to handle. Lieutenant Arik Vallis, his face pale under the harsh glow of the laser plasma displays, scrambled to follow orders. His hands moved rapidly across the controls, fingers a blur. "I'm trying, sir. It won't. Damn it, it's stabilizing." "Isolate it from the rest of the network. I don't want this thing spreading," Kade growled, his gaze locked on the screen. The signal's jagged patterns were like nothing Earth had ever intercepted before, like a violent pulse hammering the silence of space. There was no precedent for this, no way to classify it. "Commander, I don't know what we're dealing with here," Vallis said, his voice strained. "It's unlike anything I've seen. It's too structured, almost like it's reaching out, trying to make contact." "Make contact?" Kade's voice dripped with skepticism. "This isn't a contact. This is a damn message from the unknown. And I don't like it. You get me a direct line to General Voss, now." Vallis nodded, quickly switching channels, but before he could make the connection, a series of alarming notifications flashed on the screen. Kade leaned in, narrowing his eyes. The signal wasn't just coming from the Cori system. It was already shifting its frequency, adapting like some kind of strange biological transmission. "General Voss here." "What is it, Kade?" The voice on the other end was familiar, calm, but Kade could hear the concern underneath. "We've got a problem," Kade said, his voice cutting through the calm. "Something's sending a signal from the Cori system. It's encoded. No standard format. It's not human. It's too advanced, too deliberate." "Not human?" General Voss's voice turned tight with suspicion. "Dorian, you're not suggesting—" "I don't know what I'm suggesting yet, but this isn't an ordinary distress call. It's evolving. The patterns are unlike anything we've ever seen. It's almost like it's learning." Kade's gaze drifted to the data, its irregular pulse still flashing violently across the screen. "I want to know what this is, and I want to know yesterday." Voss was silent for a moment, but Kade could hear the wheels turning in the background. "All right. I'm sending this up to Earth Command, but you need to be ready for the worst. I'm putting Dr. Holt on standby. You get that decryption done, and whatever you do, don't engage it unless we know exactly what it is." Kade's jaw tightened, and he slammed a hand on the console again, frustrated by the lack of answers. "Understood, General. I'll keep you posted. Kade out." The transmission cut off, and Kade turned to Vallis, who had already begun the painstaking process of isolating the signal for deeper analysis. His face was etched with anxiety as he glanced up at the commander. "This isn't good, sir." "You don't have to tell me twice," Kade muttered. "Keep it tight. No leaks. Earth doesn't need to know yet, not until we have something solid." The atmosphere in the command center grew even more tense as the minutes ticked by. A soft hiss filled the silence as the bulkhead doors slid open, revealing Dr. Dorian Holt, the resident expert on alien communications, and a man Kade had worked with for years. Holt was always the pragmatic one, the scientist who balanced caution with action, but even he couldn't mask the deep concern in his eyes when he saw the erratic signal. "What have we got?" Holt's voice was low with a hint of disbelief. Kade didn't sugarcoat it. "A damn mess. A signal that's shifting, evolving, adapting. I'm no expert, but this feels like it's looking for something, and I have a bad feeling about it." He motioned to the screens, where the plasma displays were now flashing with more clarity, but still held an unnerving pattern. Holt approached the console, his hands steady as he examined the data. "It's more than we thought. This isn't just random noise. There's intelligence behind this." Kade leaned forward, his gaze fixed on Holt. "Explain." "This is Holt paused as if struggling for the right words. It's like the signal is trying to communicate. There's a code embedded in the transmission, but it's too complex, almost organic. It's evolving faster than we can keep up with. Vallis turned from his station, his eyes wide. Are you telling me it's not from an AI? It's alive? Holt nodded slowly, his brow furrowed. In a sense, yes. This is something different. Something that's adapting to our technology. That's never happened before. We may be dealing with something far more dangerous than we can predict. Kade's mind raced, but he pushed the fear to the back of his thoughts. Keep working on the decryption. If this is an attack, it's already started. We need to know what we're up against. Fast! Minutes stretched into hours as Holt and Vallis worked, their eyes glued to the screens. Kade paced the room, running through a mental checklist. His fingers twitched, itching for action. He knew Earth was out there, several light years away, but Earth's military had always been ready for anything. After all, humanity had learned how to survive in conditions that would break most species. Yet, there was something about this, something off. He could feel it in his bones. His thoughts were interrupted by Vallis. "Commander, you're going to want to see this." Kade stalked over to the console. Vallis's hand was shaking as he pointed at the display. The cryptic symbols were transforming into something more recognizable. And then, in the middle of the jumble of alien characters, one word stood out. Help. It was a single, haunting word, flashing across the screen before it quickly shifted back into the unintelligible code. Kade's breath caught in his throat. That wasn't just a distress call, it was a plea. A desperate, almost final plea. The chilling implications of that word settled over him like a weight, suffocating. "This isn't just a message," Kade said, his voice grave. "They're calling for us, and I think they want something from us." Back on Earth, the Galactic Council was already grappling with the decision of whether or not to send reinforcements. There was no clear answer. Humanity's reputation as a resilient but unpredictable species left many wary, and Kade knew this would be no different. Earth might be the last line of defense, but that didn't mean the galaxy was willing to put trust in their hands. Kade turned to his team. "We're not waiting for approval. Earth's military needs to respond now. We'll prepare the battalion." "Are you sure, Commander?" Vallis asked, his voice tinged with doubt. "We have no idea who or what we're dealing with." Kade's eyes were hard. "We'll find out soon enough. Prepare for the worst and make sure we're ready for anything." As the team went to work preparing for an unknown enemy, the weight of the moment hung heavy on Kade's shoulders. He was about to lead humanity into an unknown war, against an enemy that had already proven it could adapt faster than they could anticipate. But there was one thing he knew for sure. Earth had always been underestimated. This time they wouldn't make the same mistake. "Get them on the ground now!" Commander Dorian Kade's voice cut through the din of the war room. The massive map on the laser plasma display showed the latest trajectory of Nih'lar forces moving toward an allied colony. Kade's knuckles whitened around the edge of the table as he leaned in closer, his voice low but urgent. "We can't let them advance any further. This could be it." Vallis, standing beside him, glanced at the screen, his fingers already typing commands. "Yes, sir. But the last time we engaged them, their countermeasures were nearly flawless. We can't let our forces walk into another trap." "Then don't let them," Kade snapped, turning toward his lieutenant. "Get every advantage we can." Kade was already working through his mind what had to happen next. The decision had already been made. The Deathworlder Battalion, humanity's last hope, would take the first strike. It was time to deploy them, to see if the rigorous training in extreme environments would make a difference against an enemy that adapted faster than Earth had ever seen. In the training bay, the air stung with the sharp scent of burned ozone, and the pressure of artificial gravity slammed down on the soldiers like a hammer. Lieutenant Arik Vallis stood at the edge of the platform, watching as the battalion pushed through their drills in full combat gear. The ground beneath them was a grid of heated metal, simulating the harshest of environments. They were preparing for the unknown, for the war that had already begun in space. Vallis watched as Private Kara Drake's legs buckled under the weight of the high gravity. But there was no mercy in the atmosphere, no pause. She gritted her teeth, locking her arms tight, and pushed herself upright, continuing the drill with unwavering focus. Good, Vallis murmured to himself. That's the kind of spirit we need. Vallis's gaze flicked to the center of the room, where Commander Kade stood, surveying the battalion's progress. His sharp features were drawn tight as always. He didn't smile, not even when the soldiers excelled. But then again, that was why Kade was leading them. He didn't lead through charisma, but by sheer will. He expected nothing less than perfection. The battalion, all 50 of them, was ready. It was time. The Nih'lar fleet had already made its move. As Kade's fleet advanced toward the alien threat, the first signs of trouble appeared. A dark cloud of ships appeared on Earth's scanners, moving swiftly with no warning or mercy. There was no formal declaration of war, just sudden destructive action. The Nih'lar were everywhere, silent and deadly. Kade's voice crackled through the comms, his orders cutting through the chaos. Form up! Deploy the strike teams! No hesitation! Take them down! We need them to know we're here to stay! The Nih'lar were like ghosts, their ships an unholy fusion of organic material and advanced technology, their weapons capable of overwhelming Earth's defenses with brutal efficiency. As Kade watched from the command deck, the first shots were fired. Earth's weapons struck true, but the Nih'lar ships adapted quickly, their hulls shifting in ways that allowed them to absorb damage and rebuild on the fly. Target their weak points, Kade ordered, his tone unforgiving. Find something, anything, that will make them bleed. The battle intensified. The Earth fleet fought back with ferocity, but it was clear that the Nih'lar had been prepared for this. They learned too fast, countering each move Earth made with an alarming efficiency. Every tactic Earth used seemed to fall flat against their enemy's ability to absorb and evolve. Kade clenched his jaw, his fingers tapping relentlessly on the chair arm. The Nih'lar's ability to adapt, it was terrifying. The Earth fleet was on the defensive, and that's when Kade realized they needed something more, something that could break through. Captain Selden, Kade barked, turning sharply to his communications officer. I need you to take a strike team and board one of those ships. We need intel, now. Captain Varric Selden's voice came over the comms. Strike team in position, Commander. We're going in. Kade watched, waiting for the outcome. The board lights blinked rapidly, feeding data to the team. The Nih'lar warship was surrounded. Earth's ships laid down covering fire, their weapons blasting the alien fleet back long enough for the strike team to deploy. Minutes stretched like hours. The deep, echoing sounds of gunfire and explosions vibrated through the hull of Kade's command vessel, but Kade's eyes were locked onto the digital screen showing Selden's progress. A report came in. We've breached the Nih'lar ship, moving through their corridors. Minimal resistance. They don't seem to be expecting us. We're inside. Selden's voice was cold, professional, but beneath it, Kade could hear the adrenaline coursing through his officer's veins. As the strike team moved further into the ship, Kade felt his breath catch. There was a growing sense that they were not just fighting to win, they were fighting to learn. Back at the command center, Doctor. Torin Holt and Lieutenant Renan Jorik were analyzing the data coming in from the captured warship. The strange biology of the Nih'lar was unlike anything they had encountered. Even the air inside the ship felt different, charged with an unsettling static, like the very ship was alive. They're not just invaders, Holt said grimly, his eyes flicking over the data. They're evolving, and not slowly either. It's as if they're learning from us as we engage them. Renan's fingers flew over the controls. This doesn't make sense. Their biology is too adaptable. I mean, look at this. They're changing in real time. Every shot we make, every countermeasure, they learn. Holt leaned forward, his voice low but urgent. We can exploit this. It's like a flaw in their system. Their adaptive ability is linked to a biological structure. If we target that structure, we could force their cells to collapse. We could neutralize them. With the right kind of weapon, we can break them down. Kade stood in front of the display, taking in the information. His mind raced. Holt was right. The Nih'lar were a deadly, evolving enemy, but Earth had something they didn't: adaptability of its own. Humanity had been surviving in impossible conditions for centuries. Now it was time to turn that advantage into a weapon. We'll use it, Kade said, his voice sharp with determination. We'll design something that targets their weakness. Get the fleet ready. We're not letting them win. But as Earth's forces scrambled to adapt, the Nih'lar had already begun adapting to humanity. A new transmission came in. A message, direct from the heart of the Nih'lar fleet. This is Cross Vakor. The voice was cold and menacing. You think you can challenge us? You think your puny species can survive in this galaxy? We've already studied you. We know how you fight, how you think. You will fall. Kade's fist clenched at the message. The Nih'lar had already studied them, already learned from them. This wasn't going to be just another fight. It was a battle of wits, of strategy, of survival. They think they have us figured out, Kade muttered under his breath. They're wrong. With a hard glance at his officers, Kade ordered, "Prepare for the next phase. We take the fight to them." The Nih'lar had underestimated humanity once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. Are we ready for this? Kade's voice cut through the thick tension of the command room as he leaned over the laser plasma display, watching the latest battlefield reports flicker on the screen. The war had reached a critical point. Earth had barely held its ground, and the Nih'lar were evolving with every move they made. The only thing that could tilt the balance was a weapon, something that could break through their relentless adaptability. Admiral Kalen Drex and General Tarek Voss stood on either side of Kade, their faces unreadable. Kade's eyes flicked between them. The time for conventional warfare is over. We need something that can exploit their weakness. Drex nodded. We're working on it. Holt's team is developing the radiation weapon, and we've got the support of our best scientists. The problem is mobility. We don't have the luxury of waiting, Kade said firmly. The Nih'lar will adjust to anything we throw at them unless we hit them where it hurts. We need to be the ones adapting faster. General Voss's eyes narrowed as he examined the strategy laid out before him. You're right. But our ground forces need an advantage. We've been making progress with the Deathworlder Battalion, but the Nih'lar have proven they can adapt on the fly. We can't give them time to figure us out. Kade's mind raced. It wasn't just a matter of pushing forward anymore. The battle had become a race against time. If they couldn't outsmart the Nih'lar, Earth was finished. They needed something that would devastate the enemy before they could evolve to counter it. I'll give you the ground forces, Kade said, his voice steady. You handle the orbital strikes. I'll focus on getting that weapon working. On the battlefield, the Deathworlder Battalion trained relentlessly. Lieutenant Arik Vallis observed them from the observation deck, his eyes scanning the soldiers as they pushed through the training drills. Sweat clung to their uniforms as they fought in conditions that would break most species, but not these soldiers. The air felt thick with pressure as gravity increased, and the environment shifted from toxic to unbearable. Yet, the battalion didn't falter. They knew that humanity's survival rested in their hands. Push through! Don't stop! Vallis yelled. Watching Sergeant Isla Wren tackle the simulated terrain, her breath ragged as she sprinted across the field. Her body was moving at the edge of human capability, but that was the point. Earth soldiers had to exceed every limitation. They had to be stronger, faster, and more adaptable than the enemy. Private Keon Huxley stumbled, his foot catching a jagged piece of rock as he fell hard against the ground. But he didn't stay down. Grabbing his weapon, he pushed himself up and continued to move forward. Valis grinned. Good. That's what we need. Valis turned as Kade approached, the sound of boots against metal ringing through the room. Kade's sharp eyes scanned the battalion below before settling on Valis. Anything new on the weapon? Kade asked, his tone blunt. Valis wiped sweat from his brow. Dr. Holt and Jorik are working as fast as they can, but the radiation weapon is still in the early stages. They've got the science, but they need more time to make it portable. Kade nodded, his jaw clenched. Time's something we don't have. Push the team harder. Make sure they're ready for a fast deployment. Back in the lab, Doctor. Torin Holt and Lieutenant Renan Jorik worked side by side, their focus unwavering. The radiation weapon they were developing was their last chance, a device that would target the Nih'lar's biological systems directly, exploiting a weakness they had discovered in their rapid adaptation process. The concept was simple in theory. Earth's natural radiation could break down the Nih'lar's cellular structure. The challenge was calibrating it to be effective without harming Earth soldiers. This isn't like building a regular weapon, Dr. Holt muttered under his breath as he adjusted the settings on a plasma emitter. We're working with forces we don't fully understand. Their biology is too dynamic. Jorik didn't look up from the data readout on his heads-up display. It's either this, or we risk being overrun. The Nih'lar are getting too strong. They're learning faster than we can fight them. Which means, Holt said, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice, we need this weapon, and we need it now. We've got one shot at this. The room hummed with tension as they made final adjustments to the emitter, calibrating it for the first live test. The weapon had the potential to turn the tide, but its effectiveness was still unknown. We're pushing it to the limits, Jorik muttered, wiping his forehead as the device powered up. If it works, we'll need to figure out how to carry it into combat. Right now, it's too bulky. That's the next step, Holt replied, his eyes never leaving the display as the weapon's radiation levels climbed. First, we test it, then we refine it. The Deathworlder Battalion was deployed to the front lines, engaging in smaller skirmishes with the Nih'lar in a series of hit-and-run tactics. Kade watched the reports come in, the tension growing with every encounter. The Nih'lar were adapting quickly, countering every new move with frightening efficiency. But Kade's forces had the element of surprise on their side. In one particular skirmish, the Deathworlders infiltrated a Nih'lar biological research station hidden deep within a hostile moon's atmosphere. It was a risky operation, but it paid off. They gained valuable intelligence about the Nih'lar's rapid adaptation process, data that would help refine Earth's weaponry. But the Nih'lar weren't blind. They retaliated swiftly. The battalion, having completed its mission, found itself surrounded as Nih'lar ships dropped from the skies, launching coordinated attacks. The Earth soldiers fought back fiercely, using the terrain to their advantage, but it was clear that the Nih'lar had learned from their previous failures. They're evolving, Valis said into his comms as the battle raged. They've learned our tactics. Keep them off balance. Don't give them time to adapt. Back in the lab, Holt's team finished their initial field test of the radiation weapon. The results were promising, extremely promising. The first live test on a captured Nih'lar test subject showed the weapon's devastating impact. The Nih'lar's cellular structures began breaking down almost immediately, their bodies deteriorating at a rapid rate. We've got it, Holt said, his voice tinged with awe as he watched the live feed. This could work. But there was a problem. As the radiation weapon's range was tested, it became clear that its effect could only be localized. Earth would need a more mobile solution to fully exploit this advantage in the field. Holt looked up from the readout, his brow furrowed. It works, but we need to refine the range. Otherwise, we'll need to get too close. Kade's voice came over the comms, cutting through the silence. Then get it done. We're not waiting for perfection. We need it now. As Kade stood in the command room, watching the next phase unfold, he knew this was the turning point. The weapon was ready, but so was the enemy. All stations, deploy the radiation weapons. Target their biological infrastructure first. Neutralize their ship's systems, Kade ordered, his voice grim as the gravity of the situation hung over the command room like a dark cloud. The massive display before him flickered, showing the Nih'lar's fleet advancing toward Earth's strategic positions. The time had come for Earth to strike with everything it had, and the weapon, finally operational, was humanity's first real chance to take the upper hand. The heads-up display hummed as the first wave of radiation-armed ships shot forward, aimed directly at the heart of the Nih'lar's spaceborne fleet. The radiation weapon's energy surge was visible across the battlefield, rippling through the void like a shockwave. At first, it seemed to work. The Nih'lar ships flickered as their bioengineered hulls began to corrode under the onslaught, their internal systems shutting down in real time. Earth forces pushed forward, confident they had found the key to breaking the enemy's relentless assault. But that confidence proved fleeting. A shriek of frustration echoed through Kade's comms. "Commander, they're adapting!" The voice belonged to Captain Varek Selden, who was coordinating the strike from the front lines. "We've just lost contact with 2 of our support ships. They've deployed countermeasures, biological drones. They're neutralizing the radiation's effect as fast as we're dealing it out." Kade's fist slammed against the display, his teeth gritted in frustration. "They've countered. We knew this would happen." His mind raced through contingencies, strategizing their next move. The Nih'lar were learning as fast as they could hit them, absorbing their tactics, evolving to meet their strikes. "Switch to contingency protocols. Decoys and traps. We hit them where they don't expect," Kade barked, turning sharply to his officers. "Get the Deathworlder Battalion ready for immediate deployment. We need them in the trenches." On the battlefield, the Deathworlder Battalion was already prepared. Under Valis's watchful eye, they entered the fray, not as soldiers, but as a force of nature. They didn't just fight in space. They adapted to the terrain, the environment, the very atmosphere of the planet they were assaulting. Their boots crunched against the rocky surface of the Nih'lar-controlled moon, their suits sealed tight against the toxic air. "Move out!" Valis shouted, his voice barely audible over the static of gunfire. The soldiers advanced in perfect synchronization, their heavy weapons targeting the biological drones the Nih'lar had unleashed. Every shot from their rifles landed with brutal force, cutting through the alien defenses. Yet, with each passing second, the Nih'lar retaliated. They didn't fight like a conventional army. They fought like a species that knew how to evolve in real time. Private Kara Drake dashed across the battlefield, darting behind a crumbling rock formation. Her breath was ragged in her helmet as the environmental sensors beeped, warning her of increasing radiation levels. She adjusted her suit's settings, fighting against the surge of heat. "This place is a damn furnace," she muttered, taking cover as the ground beneath her shook. She raised her weapon, the hum of the firing mechanism blending into the chaos. The Nih'lar were everywhere, adapting, evolving, but humanity had something they didn't: tenacity. Back on Earth's fleet, the intensity of the fight escalated as Kade watched the tide of the battle shift in real time. The Nih'lar had counterattacked, launching bioengineered craft that swarmed over the human ships like locusts, stripping away their defenses. Kade could feel his pulse quicken as the live feeds showed Earth's ships being overwhelmed. The voice of Admiral Kalen Drex came through the comms. "Commander, they're hitting our supply lines. Direct strikes. The fleet's on the defensive now. We can't keep taking these hits." Kade's mind sharpened. "Send in the reserve units. They're on their way." His heart raced, the weight of the moment crashing down. The Deathworlders had managed to push the Nih'lar back momentarily, but the balance was fragile. The Nih'lar had learned. and now they were exploiting their newfound advantage. In the distance, the Nih'lar mothership loomed, its blackened silhouette rising ominously from the depths of the battlefield. This was it. Kade's eyes narrowed. If they could disable the mothership, it might just turn the tide. But there was a catch. Taking it down would require a sacrifice. As Earth's forces continued their defense, Kade formulated a plan. He turned to Valis, who had just returned from the front lines. "We're going to need a diversion, a big one. The Nih'lar have focused too much of their firepower on us. We're going to make them regret it." Valis, his brow furrowed, hesitated for a moment. "What are you thinking?" "We'll hit them where it hurts. I want you and your squad to infiltrate the mothership. Take out their core systems. Disrupt their defenses. You'll be a distraction long enough for the rest of the fleet to strike." Valis nodded grimly. "Understood. But you're asking for a lot. This will cost us." Kade met Valis's gaze. "It's a calculated risk. If we don't make them vulnerable now, we lose everything. We go in hard, no hesitation." The assault on the Nih'lar mothership was like nothing Earth's forces had ever attempted. The Deathworlder Battalion stormed the ship with laser precision, cutting through the outer defenses with surgical strikes. But the Nih'lar weren't unprepared. As soon as Earth forces breached the outer hull, the Nih'lar deployed every last resource to fend them off. The atmosphere inside the mothership was unstable, fluctuating as the radiation levels spiked in response to Earth's weaponry. "Keep moving! Stay low!" Valis shouted, his voice crackling over the comms as his squad navigated the darkened corridors of the alien ship. They encountered resistance, Nih'lar warriors, their bodies almost entirely transformed into biological machines, each one more horrifying than the last. But the Deathworlders were relentless, using their surroundings to gain the upper hand. Valis's heart pounded as he approached the control room. The air was thick with tension. "Ready yourself," he ordered. "We breach on my mark." Just as they stormed the final corridor, a flash of light erupted from the control center. The Nih'lar had set a trap. The blast knocked Valis back, and for a moment, the world seemed to spin. His vision blurred, but he knew he had to keep moving. He could feel the heat of the radiation seeping into his suit, threatening to overload the internal systems. He had to finish this. "Deploy the EMP charge," Valis gritted out, his voice strained but steady. "We'll knock out their systems, give Kade's fleet the opening they need." With a final push, the blast went off, sending the mothership's core systems into a momentary shutdown. But it wasn't without cost. Half of Valis's team had been lost in the explosion, their bodies already disintegrating under the barrage of radiation. The price was steep, but it had worked. The mothership was vulnerable. Back in space, Kade ordered the fleet to make its final assault. With the mothership's systems crippled, Earth's forces hit hard. The Nih'lar tried to fight back, their remaining ships launching a final, desperate counteroffensive. But the advantage was now with humanity. Kade's fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. Kade's voice was steady as he issued the final orders. "Finish this. We take them down now, for Earth, for humanity." The battle raged on, but with the Nih'lar's defensive systems crippled, the Earth fleet pushed through, overwhelming their enemy's forces. It was a brutal victory, and many lives had been lost. But in the end, Earth had succeeded. The Nih'lar were defeated, their fleet shattered. As Kade stood in the command center, watching the last of the Nih'lar forces surrender, he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would know humanity's strength now. "Strike now, while we've got the opening. No hesitation. This ends here." Kade's voice rang out across the comms, calm but filled with an icy resolve. His eyes never left the laser plasma display, watching as the last remnants of the Nih'lar fleet tried to regroup. It was all or nothing. The radiation weapon had crippled their fleet, their defenses weakened by Valis and his team's sacrifice. It was time to make them regret every step they'd taken toward Earth. The Deathworlder Battalion had pushed them back, but Earth's victory wasn't sealed yet. Nih'lar reinforcements surged from the darkness, relentless, like a pack of predators circling a wounded prey. They had one last chance to stop Earth from driving them to extinction. Valis, his voice tinged with urgency, came through the comms. "Commander, our forces are spread thin. They're hitting us from multiple fronts. We're holding, but not for long. We can't keep them at bay forever." Kade's jaw tightened. They'd been pushed to the limit. Every maneuver, every tactic had been countered by the Nih'lar's adaptability. And yet, Earth's soldiers were still standing, pushing forward against all odds. "We won't let them take this from us." "Keep pressing," Kade growled, turning to face his officers. "This isn't just about victory anymore, it's about survival, for all of us." The ship trembled as another barrage of fire erupted from the Nih'lar's remaining vessels, but Earth's fleet pushed through, relentless, determined. Kade stood, watching as the battle unfolded before him. A part of him was numb from the losses they'd already suffered, but the other part, a part he'd always held on to, refused to give in. The Nih'lar had underestimated humanity, and they were about to learn that mistake the hard way. "Admiral Drex, take the fleet into position. Prepare the final strike," Kade ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. Drex's voice came through the comms, calm but strained. "We're ready, Commander. But there's a catch. The Nih'lar have deployed something new. Some sort of counterattack, biological in nature. We don't know what it is yet." Kade didn't flinch. "Then we'll deal with it. Make it happen. We don't stop until they're finished." On the front lines, the Deathworlder Battalion had already engaged. Valis's team was on the ground, deep in the heart of the Nih'lar's operations, facing an overwhelming onslaught. Earth's soldiers adapted, as they always had. But the Nih'lar were unlike any enemy they had faced before. As the radiation weapon disrupted their biological systems, they fought back harder, as though in a desperate attempt to stave off extinction. Valis and his squad were entrenched in the ruins of a Nih'lar research base, their surroundings burned and warped by the radiation blast. The air felt thick with tension as they clashed with the alien forces. Their weapons fired in rapid succession, the ground beneath them quaking with every strike. But the Nih'lar had something new, a biological weapon of their own. It surged through the air in a toxic cloud, a swirling mass of mutating life forms. The Deathworlders fought with everything they had, but the aliens had adapted to their tactics. Every weapon Earth had developed, every strategy, seemed to fail against the new threat. "Hold the line," Valis shouted, his voice hoarse through the comms. His pulse was erratic, his breath labored in the face of the enemy's overwhelming force. "We can't let them take this from us." But just as Earth's forces were beginning to falter, a new wave of ships emerged from the blackness, part of the final assault Kade had ordered. The fleet, battered but resolute, unleashed a final strike. Massive energy blasts ripping through the Nih'lar fleet, their ships erupting in flames as the radiation weapon found its mark. The tide began to shift. Kade's voice was unwavering as he watched the battle unfold. "Now, take the mothership. Full force. Don't give them time to recover." The Nih'lar's mothership, the heart of their war machine, was the last bastion. It loomed in the distance, a massive black mass, its tendrils of destruction reaching out like a monstrous hand. Kade's heart pounded in his chest as Earth's fleet closed in. But as they neared, the Nih'lar launched their final counterattack, desperate and brutal. Inside the mothership, Valis's squad was fighting a losing battle. They had planted the charges that would disable the Nih'lar's core systems, but the enemy had adapted faster than they could have predicted. The air inside the mothership felt like it was choking the life out of them, thick with radiation and burning metal. Valis could feel his suit overheating as he pushed forward, a deadly calm washing over him. "For Earth," he whispered to himself, his hand clutching the detonator. The final push would either bring the end to the Nih'lar or their victory. But then, as if the battle itself had reached its crescendo, a deafening roar filled the comms. The Nih'lar were fighting back in a last-ditch effort to protect their home world, throwing everything they had left into a desperate final strike. The sheer power of their counterattack sent shockwaves through the ship, and Valis could feel the tremor in his bones. "We're almost there," Valis shouted, his voice barely audible over the explosion that shook the entire vessel. "Just a little longer." The detonator clicked in his hand. The bomb went off, and the ship's central core exploded in a massive flash of light, the shockwave tearing through the mothership. The Nih'lar were stunned, their defenses shattered, their fleet crippled. But Valis didn't see the victory. He saw only the price of it, the bodies of his squadmates, the soldiers who had given their lives to protect humanity. Back in space, Kade watched the destruction unfold. The Nih'lar were faltering, their ships dissolving in the wake of Earth's assault, but the cost was unbearable. Kade's jaw clenched as he processed the losses, the lives sacrificed for this victory. But there was no time to mourn. The battle wasn't over yet. "Finish them off! Wipe them out! We're not stopping until this war is over," Kade ordered. His voice was a command, a force that carried the weight of all those who had fallen, all those who had fought to protect Earth. The final wave of Earth's fleet surged forward, obliterating the remnants of the Nih'lar forces. There was no room for mercy. The galaxy would not forget this day. Humanity had proven its strength. As Kade stood before the command center's screen, watching the last of the Nih'lar vessels crumble into space debris, a silence fell over the room. The cost of victory had been high, and Kade's heart was heavy with the knowledge of the lives lost. But as the last of the Nih'lar's forces disintegrated, the crew stood at attention, silent in their reverence for those who had given everything for this moment. Kade looked out at the crew, his expression hard but proud. "We've done it. Earth's not just a death world anymore. We've earned our place among the stars." And as the crew quietly filed out, Kade remained standing at the helm, staring into the distance. Humanity had won, but the war had left its scars. There would be ripples in the galaxy, long-lasting effects from this battle. The age of Earth had begun, not as a species to be feared, but as the ones who had proven, once and for all, that they could survive the darkest of days. The Deathworlders had answered the call, and the universe would never forget.